In this series, lowimpact.org and the Open Credit Network talks with people working to build a mutually owned, democratic, decentralised economy that builds community and doesn't destroy nature. We want to increase collaboration to bring about system change. Find links to the sites mentioned in the videos in the description below. Join the conversation by liking, commenting and subscribing to our channel.
I hear that you've joined the board of the Ecological Land Co-op. Is that
I
right?
have, yes.
I left a couple of years ago.
Oh, right. Okay, cool.
I left when Chris Smage joined.
Right.
From Vallis Veg, and
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Yeah, I mean, it's such an inspiring organization.
Such an inspiring organisation. They've got planning permission in Wealden, which I think is the most difficult council in the country to get planning permission.
Right.
Very well.
Yeah, it's nice. They're now at the point of having a solid reputation, you know, and I think that plays a big role when it goes to working with different planners, that they know that they're legit, you know. So often planners are scared of alternative abodes and lifestyles, etc.
Chris Smage is writing a book about the future for small farmers.
Mm-hmm.
He sent me a snippet, and it was very, very good. Is life just too tough for small farmers? I mean, will the kids just inevitably leave and go to the cities? You know, how can we?
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting question, and certainly if you look at global trends, that's the predominant global trend of the past 300 years is urbanization, young people leaving and going to cities. If you look at how the UN and the different international institutions see the development and the raising the income of different countries, increasing the productivity of agriculture is a key part of that, and that basically means increasing productivity means less people on the land producing the same or more food. So it's a big trend, but then we see a lot of people, you know, so as a person of my age living in an urban area, pretty much everyone I know has some kind of dream of one day moving to the countryside and having their smallholding or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I don't know whether it's totally lost. We're finding a new balance with it. I feel like that for the small producer, there are increasing number of opportunities for you to be able to sell and distribute your produce from, you know, and it's widely accepted that, say, small scale market gardening is a profitable way to have an enterprise on a small piece of land that's viable. You know, fruit and veg is actually much more cost effective or it can be more cost effective to produce on a small scale than it is on an enormous scale.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting times, and I feel like countries like the UK and the US, we get stuck in this massive polarization between competing forces, and it's where a lot of that innovation happens. So yeah.
I read an article recently on Medium, and it was written by a farmer in the States, and he's advocating cooperative farming. So farms would get much bigger, but they wouldn't be owned just by one farmer. They'd be owned by a group of farmers farming it cooperatively. And his argument was that everybody doesn't have to do everything at the moment. One small farmer would have to do all the bookkeeping, all the admin, all the deliveries, all the infrastructure, everything. And all the kinds of things that are produced on the farm, he or she would have to have a lot of different kinds of knowledge. Whereas you could sort of specialize a bit if you're working with a cooperative. You could be the specialist in dairy production or tomatoes in polytunnels, or you could really focus and get that done really, really well. And other people would be doing the same thing, and somebody would be doing the books for the entire cooperative. So
yeah,
and also it's this more of a sense of community, and I think that was a very interesting article.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And you could look at this kind of the sharing of resources, the sharing of infrastructure. It could happen in loads of different ways. So there are successful models around the world that use a kind of cooperative model similar to what he's talking about. But things like small-scale abattoirs, so people within an area have access quite locally to some of the processing facilities that they need. One of the things that stops small-scale veg being used in procurement, say to feed in hospitals or schools, is that there aren't ways to process those vegetables to clean them, essentially, that small-scale producers can tap into. So if we had appropriate facilities for washing, cleaning, processing vegetables that lots of producers could tap into, then that could be the source of vegetables for schools. So I think there's a lot to be said for an infrastructure layer that supports smaller producers to feed into it, and distribution is definitely another example of that, moving things from one place to another.
I think that's why the Open Food Network is so good. It makes it easier for small farmers and small producers, and anything that does that has got to be a fantastic idea.
Well, yeah, that's what we're aiming to do.
Have you got any ideas about how we bring different sectors together, sort of the food sector and the money sector and the energy sector and the housing sector and all to try and, and the IT sector, and how to boost this sort of, there's lots of people thinking about how we build a new economy.
Right.
But we're still completely marginal. we really need to move in and start taking over the mainstream economy. Have you got any ideas about things that might help in that direction?
Yeah, I mean, it is really hard. I feel like one of the challenges, all of the solutions exist. I think when we look around for all of the ecological and social problems that we face, it's not like we don't have solutions to these problems. They're out there, but they fail to reach scale. Part of that, is that we are marginal. It's really hard to get that critical mass where things reach a tipping point and tip over into being the norm. And we're up against, it feels like enormous barriers, like when trying to grow and scale, because there is so much to economies of scale. I mean, I feel like that we often undervalue the role of coming together, of celebration, gatherings, meetings, that often these things, that's when the real innovation happens. Certainly in the food sector, one of the big game changers has been the Oxford Real Farming Conference. Yeah. Which started as a fringe conference to the Oxford Farming Conference, which is essentially where all of the big players in agribusiness come together. The Real Farming Conference started as to try and show that there are alternatives to that way of farming. And now that conference is much, much bigger than the original conference. It's the focal point of the year for the sector. Everybody comes together. The ideas that come out of that, the connections that are made, it's been really transformative, and I think continues to be so. So certainly the power of coming together, but that in itself is hard. I know that the cooperative sector often is when gatherings happen, there's often a critique that it's not very diverse, these gatherings, and so it's quite hard to make that shift from being a place of a lot of white people of a certain class, shifting into something that feels inclusive for everyone. And that's work we all have to do. Part of it is that maybe our sector is exclusive, and we certainly feel it in the food sector, that the good food appears to be the pursuit of white middle class people. And that we have to take a long, hard look at ourselves and address that. And I think the cooperative sector suffers from that to a degree as well. So
I'm a working class family and a working class town, and I go back and I think it's percolating down. There are lots of TV programs there are lots of foodie TV programs now, and my family, they don't buy exclusively organic, but they do buy a little bit of organic, and they switch from white bread to wholemeal bread and things like that. They've just seen TV programs and they've changed their habits.
Yeah,
And less,
the power of
a lot less meat.
Right. The movement to meat reduction has really gained strength, and certainly you see that in the kind of, what is it, Generation Y that comes after the millennials, and the YouTube movements and things like this. Like there's these media streams are really powerful in changing people's behaviors. I think, yeah, the power of media in changing what we see as normal, because like behavior change isn't really something that we can ask anyone to do. Hey, you change your behavior. It doesn't quite work like that. Like we all try to fit in and be normal. So we want to do what our friends do and what we think everybody else does. And we see what everybody else does through media largely and through our friendship circles. So like that, making those shifts of awareness through media, what's normal, is really powerful. And it's becoming more normal to eat less meat and to think about vegetables, to use reusable coffee cups, things like this. Yeah, so I mean there's some hope there, but the shifts are still quite individualistic, and we need to be more systemic about it.
I often think that the state it's not very helpful. I mean, the big corporations don't pay their fair share of tax.
No.
More producers do. And I know that there are subsidies for large farmers, but there are no subsidies for small farmers under a certain area. It's difficult to get your hands on any subsidies, which is crazy.
Right.
It's crazy, and I just see the state.
Yeah.
It annoys me so much. There's so much that they could do to help, and they're just not doing it.
Yeah. I mean, the subsidy thing, I think we're going to see changes happen depending on how Brexit goes. That's all European policy. But even if we stay in Europe, European policy and the common agricultural policy is shifting now away from this kind of per hectare payment for land ownership if you're over 5 hectares. Yeah, but another thing on this, like, so we look at the markets and we look at government, but I do, there's talk now recently about this third pillar, which is community. And so if we have 3 pillars in our society, it feels like community has been undervalued quite a lot. That the markets, the invisible hand does so much for us, and government, the state looks after you from cradle to grave. But we put a lot of trust and also responsibility on markets and government to solve our problems, but community's been overlooked. And I do feel like there should be a responsibility within markets and government to start to re-establish communities. And it's something that we've seen in the past. Certainly markets have played a role in building communities in bleaker times than now. So
often the market, an actual real market, is the heart of a community.
Right.
But it's not a market that can be exploited by multinational corporations. It's just small local producers. I used to work in Romania, and I tried to explain to Romanians what a farmer's market was.
And they were like, "What? You mean everything?"
That's just a market.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But so that we're building the open credit network.
Yeah.
Try to build a new money system. It's a
absolutely
name, the Open Food Network and the Open Credit Network. It'd be great if the Open Food Network could somehow use mutual credit as an exchange system within the small providers.
It certainly comes up a lot within the Open Food Network community, that some kind of credit network would be hugely beneficial. It's really tricky, like, to find the balance of it, because one blockage we often find is that producers, they need to buy things that will not be on the credit network. Like, that will just always be the case.
We'll try to get them onto the network.
Well, yeah, I mean, if we can build a network, like if the network can encompass as much as the normal economy, which is obviously the goal and hope. But yeah, buying potting mix, buying seed, paying your rent, paying your electricity bills. If we could, like, the scale of the challenge is not to be underestimated. But certainly it's an exciting one to explore. I love Hullcoin, for example, that have used cryptocurrencies to try and solve part of this problem, because often with the credit networks, you know, you start to run up against the FSA, FCA, whatever it's called these days. Yeah, and one of the ways around that Hullcoin have done is quite exciting.
We're talking with Kate. She's in the States at the moment, but we want to have a chat with
Yeah,
her.
right.
The all right, so we've got another website called noncorporate.org where we help people extricate themselves from the corporate sector and get the stuff that they need from non-corporate sources, especially sort of local and small scale sources. So I definitely need to get you onto non-corporate as a
Great.
the food sector.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll also sign you up to the blog so you can see the other interviews that we do and they can see you.
Yeah, I had a look. Some great people on your interviewee list.
Yeah, I'm just obsessed with trying to bring people together and network and build the whole sector, really.
Right. So, I mean, it's such important work to creating the new world that we want to live in.
Yeah. But all right then, Lynn. It's been really great talking with you.
Yeah, likewise, absolutely.
And so hopefully we'll talk to you again later on, see how you're getting on.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant. I'd love to have a chat with some updates in the future. And yeah, looking forward to hearing everything that comes out of all the work you're doing.
Yeah, thank you very much.